if you can tell by the title and my new additions, today we are going to be ranking every season of TVD, The Vampire Diaries. So if you would like to just get to the ranking, here's your timestamp. I'd actually recommend staying around for my rules in my ranking, because if you've seen my last two, technically 3 videos over me ranking stuff, this one is different because instead of ranking an entire genre of stuff that I've seen, I'm only ranking one specific TV show, so obviously that's going to kind of change how this works. Okay, so starting off, I basically tried to give like a recap. I literally went through every episode of every single season of TVD. So if I happen to just like miss something that you thought was vital, I'm sorry, because I might have. But for the past 3 days, I've literally been just going through every single season and writing down like pages and pages of notes for every season. So I'm going to be using that. I wrote down everything I thought that was relevant, and all the major like character developments, plot points, things that kind of may not have weight right now, but have weight in later seasons, if that makes sense. And I'm making sure to do this not only for myself, but also for you, just in case you'd like to leave your ranking in the comment section down below. So I think we should get into it because it's late. I have work tomorrow and I still have not eaten dinner. I also want to say this is not in like this happens in this episode, this happens in this episode. So if it seems like stuff is coming fast, it's literally every amalgamation of every episode, and I just kind of wrote it down as it was happening, as I saw it. So like if you're like, whoa, that kind of happened fast, how did this happen, and then this resolution to this problem already happened, because I just didn't think anything in between there was important. They got to the resolution, if that makes sense. But let's get into it. Season 1. Elena meets Stefan. Damon comes to town. Bonnie finds out she's a witch. Elena finds out that she looks like Catherine, but Elena doesn't know who Catherine is. She just finds a picture of a woman who looks like her, but the picture was taken in like 1854 or something. Elena gets closer to Stefan's secret. All the while this is happening, Caroline is getting compelled by Damon. Stefan traps Damon in the basement. You're going to be hearing about the basement a lot. Just keep that in mind. Elena finds out Stefan is a vampire. Vicky's turn attacks people and Stefan stakes her. This prompts Elena to question just vampirism and wanting to be with Stefan. Lexi comes to town. Caroline is forced to get the medallion from Bonnie for Damon. We don't know why Damon wants this medallion, but we know that this is what he is looking for at this part of the season. Bonnie's powers are growing, and Aloric comes to town. Damon kills Stefan's friend Lexi, framing her for all the murders to get the police thinking that the killer, who has been actually Damon at this point in the season, thinking that the vampire killer that they've been looking for, that he found them and they can stop looking, even though Lexi's not responsible for any of these killings. They've all been Damon's. At this point, a little bit later, Stefan agrees to help Damon open the tomb. He doesn't necessarily know why Damon wants to get into this tomb, but they make this agreement where if Stefan helps Damon open the tomb, then Damon will leave town, because he's already been causing all this trouble, killing all these people. All the while this is happening, Anna has been kind of getting close to Jeremy. I'll say Jeremy. I usually say Jeremy, but I guess it's Jeremy, so I'll make sure to keep that pronunciation right. But all the while, Anna has been getting close to Jeremy, and we don't know why. She's just this random girl who's come to town, yada, yada, yada. Bonnie and her Grams open the tomb, but doing the spell to open the tomb was a bit too much, and Bonnie's grandmother dies. At this point, she kind of leaves for a little bit. I just also wanted to add on, because I just forgot to say this. After they open the tomb, Damon finds out that Catherine is not in the tomb. Later, he finds out she's never been in the tomb, but as of right now, she's not in there, and that prompts him to spiral. This is why he turns Vicky, and she ends up dying. And also, he just decides to stay in Mystic Falls at this point because he's having fun and he wants to stay to help Stefan. I completely put that in air quotes, but yeah, this was just a detail I accidentally left out, but, kind of explains as to why Damon is in town, because he was going to leave after he, got Catherine back. So yeah. Anna gets her mom back, and because Bonnie's grandmother dies before they can reseal the tomb is left just open, and all the vampires inside the tomb get out. I also want to correct myself from earlier. Stefan knows that Damon wants to open the tomb because Catherine is in there. I said he didn't know why. I believe he did know why. I just wanted to say that just in case that is actually, he knew why he was opening the tomb. Like I said, guys, it's a recap, but 8 seasons. I just went through 8 seasons. If I get a detail or two wrong, just correct me in the comments politely. After the tomb vampires get released, John comes to town, and Damon tries to kill John because John is going around basically threatening everybody. So yeah, no one likes John. I don't like John. Alaric and Damon are at heads. Alaric has been trying to kill Damon because Alaric, we find out that he's a vampire slayer, self-proclaimed. And then we get introduced to the Gilbert ring and the idea of the Gilbert ring from John and Alaric because they are both wearing them at this point in time. Stefan gets taken by the Tomb Gang. I don't completely remember why, but this kind of puts them at heads. The Tomb Gang and the Salvatores have been kind of like feuding at this point in time, so then Stefan gets taken, and this prompts a rescue by Elena, Alaric, and Damon. Some tomb vampires die, some leave town, some stick around. But during this fight, Stefan is severely wounded, and he's about to die. Not by the hands of he's about to die because he's about to get attacked by one of the tomb vampires, and he's not strong enough to come back from it. But what ends up happening is that Elena gives him her blood, even though for the past however long Stefan has only been on a strictly animal blood diet, because as we find out in later seasons, he is a ripper, so he normally just stays away from feeding on humans. But because he wasn't strong enough, she gives him her blood so that he can be strong enough to fight back, because she can't fight this vampire. But what this gets us into is Stefan getting addicted to human blood again. He goes through this cycle quite a few times, not only before we are introduced to him in the show, but also like through the seasons. And this same exact episode, Caroline finds Vicky's body. Stefan continues to go on a blood spiral. John threatens to out the Salvatores. Jeremy wants to get turned by Anna because at this point he's read Elena's diary and he's like spiraling. Vicky, all the lies that Elena has been telling him. He's finding out about vampires. All of that is happening. And then this time, Stefan gets trapped in the basement by Damon because he's addicted to human blood again. He's wreaking havoc. John goes around looking for the Gilbert device, which is a device that can be used to discombobulate, I hope that's how you say that word, supernatural beings. Stefan, now that he's been trapped, is brooding in the basement. He's like, oh, you're right, I deserve to be trapped down here. What I was doing was so wrong. You know how Stefan is. Elena finds out why Damon decides to torture Stefan. I say torture because he's not necessarily torturing him, but she doesn't know as to why Damon's always kind of like picking on Stefan. But she finds out that the reason that Damon does this is because Stefan forced him to turn. He didn't want to turn. He kind of just like forced it on him. So then he kind of pledged to just like ruin his life for the rest of their immortal life. Anna and Jeremy grow closer. Stefan is getting better at this point. Isabel comes to town. We find out that Isabel is Alaric's dead wife and also Elena's biological mother. But she comes to town at this point just doing Catherine's dirty work. Bonnie and Elena reconcile at this point because after she left, she kind of blamed Elena for her grandmother's death because the only reason she was there is because she was really helping Elena. She doesn't really care about Stefan or Damon. She was there helping her friend, that was her friend's boyfriend. Isabel gets the Gilbert device that John has been looking for and gives it to him. We find out that John is Elena's biological father. On Founders Day, John sets off the Gilbert device, and at this point the device goes off and all the vampires who were left in town, that being all the tomb vampires, including Anna and her mom, Damon gets trapped down there, and he basically burns all the vampires in a basement. Damon gets out, I believe, because Stefan goes in and saves him, but he almost doesn't make it out. But Anna dies. So yeah. And also at this point, I believe Tyler is driving and he crashes the car. Tyler's dad dies, let's say that. And then Tyler is also affected by the Gilbert device. We don't necessarily know why at this point in time because he's not a vampire, nor is his dad. But Tyler hears the Gilbert device and crashes the car with him and Caroline in it, prompting Caroline to be in the hospital. That's important for later, otherwise I wouldn't mention it. At this point, Jared finds out that Anna is dead, and so he takes a vial of her blood that she had given him. He takes it, and he tries to, I'm going to say X whenever is mentioned, just so that I don't get, like, you know, this video doesn't get claimed or something by YouTube. I'm just going to be saying X'd whenever I'm talking about people who are, or people who want themselves, okay? Just X'd. Damon kisses Catherine thinking she's Elena, so at this point Catherine is back in town just posing as Elena. And then the season ends with Catherine removing John's ring, trying to X him, and that's where season 1 ends. Now, this season is an introduction. You know, obviously towards the end of the season, TVD was still around when TV shows had like 22 seasons per episode, which I found out by like literally having to go through every single one of them. But because this is an introduction episode, I do enjoy the storyline. But I think I don't even have a pencil. I'm going to put it at 4. I'm gonna put my ranking in this notebook because I don't want to have to keep changing back and forth. So let's put it in this one. So season 1 goes at the number 4 spot. Now we're moving on to season 2. John survives almost being killed by Catherine. And at this point, everyone knows that Catherine is back in Mystic Falls. We don't know why she's back in Mystic Falls, but we know she's here. Tyler's cousin, Tyler Lockwood, the guy who crashed the car, his cousin comes to town. We find out that even though Jared tried to X himself, it didn't end up working. He didn't turn into a vampire. But a little bit later, Damon does X Jeremy, but he's wearing the Gilbert ring. And then Caroline gets turned by Catherine, not because Catherine cares about Caroline, but more to just kind of send a message. Caroline is the reason that the gang knows that Catherine is back in town, because she's like, hey, and give everybody a message for me. I'm back. Elena and the boys go get closer to the Lockwood secret after the cousin comes to town because they're wondering why he's here. Tyler finds out that he's from a long line of werewolf and how the werewolf curse is triggered. Damon and Aloric find out why Catherine and Tyler's cousin are in Mystic Falls, and that reason being that they want the Moonstone. Why they want the Moonstone? Because apparently it breaks the werewolf curse, even though later on we find out, I don't believe even in this season, but later on, like next season or the season after that, we find out that the Moonstone does not break the werewolf curse. But Elena ends up stealing the Moonstone. Elena and Stefan break up. This is just breakup number 1, so keep that in mind. The Salvatores, Aloric, Bonnie, and Jeremy devise a plan to kill Catherine because at this point she's being Catherine. It doesn't work. They try to do this at like this kind of like party. They find out as they're about to X her, she's had a witch link her and Elena. So whatever they do to Catherine, Elena also experiences. But that same exact night, Tyler X's a girl and he ends up triggering his werewolf curse. But Catherine does get captured at this point and she gets locked in the tomb. Bonnie, I believe, locks her in the tomb. And then Elena gets captured by Rose. She is just the character for this season, for the most part. But Rose kind of captures Elena to trade her freedom to Elijah, who is our first original appearance of this season of the series. But yeah, Rose captures Elena to give her to Elijah. Elena finds out why she has been basically captured, and it's because the Sun and Moon curse, she's needed to break the curse because she's a doppelganger. Okay, so Bonnie and Jared grow closer, so that's cute. Damon and Stefan learn about the originals and what the original vampires are, because also, like I said, Elijah's in town. The Salvatores end up finding out who Klaus is, not knowing like what he looks like, but that he wants Elena, and that's why everyone is kind of like going after her. More witches come to town. Elijah continues to torment the gang for the Moonstone because they're not giving it up to him. Elena sets out on this mission to sacrifice herself for her family because, you know, everyone wants her. So she's like, Elijah, keep my family safe. I'll be the sacrifice. That kind of prompts Elijah to make a deal with Elena, and that's basically the gist of the deal. And then Tyler's cousins, friends, come to town looking for Tyler's cousin, not knowing that he's dead, but wondering why he never came back. But there's continuing to find out by like how Damon is acting that there's a possibility that he might be involved in Tyler's cousin's disappearance. So that night, one of Tyler's cousin's friends bites Rose. And this is how we find out that the myth, it was thought of to be a myth at this point, but this is how the Salvatores find out that a werewolf bite is fatal to a vampire. And Rose just kind of declines, and Damon ends up Xing her to put her out of her misery. Elena and Stefan are back together, and then John shows Damon how to kill an original, which comes in handy a bit more later. And this kind of prompts Aloric and Damon to come up with a plan to X Elijah. And now Bonnie and Jeremy start to see each other. You know, they've been growing a little bit close throughout the season, and now they're together. Then at a dinner party, Damon and Aloric try to X Elijah, just putting the white oak stake. It wasn't a stake. It was the dagger that is laced with the white oak stake. They put it in, and then they take it out. It's not till later that they find out that the dagger has to be kept in for it to X an original, so they find that out the hard way. By the end of the night, at the end of the dinner party, Elijah ends up getting X'd, and his body is put in the basement of the Salvatore mansion. At this point, Matt finds out about the existence of werewolves. Matt finds out about the existence of vampires through Caroline. Isabel comes back to town, and her and John devise a plan to save Elena, but this doesn't work. Isabel actually came back. After Isabel comes back to town, she ends up dying because she was being compelled by an original. And that original ends up being Klaus, and what he does is he uses a witch to put his consciousness inside of Aloric. Klaus is going around inside of Aloric's body, kind of terrorizing everybody, kind of playing with them. He kind of does this thing at one of the school dances to make Bonnie overuse her power. And so what the gang ends up doing is, not everyone is filled in, not Elena, not Stefan, but Damon, I believe, is filled in, that they devised this plan to make it seem like Bonnie is to protect her and also to keep her existence away from Klaus because he wants her exed. Elena brings back Elijah. She unstakes him from the basement and kind of just talks to him and proposes a deal with him. He is the reason that she finds out that the sun and moon curse isn't real. What the stone is, it's a part of this ritual that Klaus is trying to perform. The curse is on Klaus, and it stops him from being able to access his werewolf side and become a hybrid. Klaus returns to his real body, and then Klaus does the ritual. Elena gets X'd, so does Jenna, and during the ritual, Klaus had turned her into a vampire to X her specifically, so that's why I mentioned Jenna, because she comes and then she goes. Elijah was preparing to X Klaus during the ritual, but right as he's about to do it, Klaus is like, I have our family. I didn't throw them at sea. If you X me, you're never going to figure out where they are. So Elijah ends up betraying the gang and taking Klaus and, going to find the rest of his family. Klaus ends up staking Elijah because he said he was going to reunite him with his family. So what he did was stake him, like the rest of the family is staked. Next thing that happens is a little bit earlier on, Tyler bites Damon. I believe during his first or second transition into a werewolf, he bites Damon, and towards the end of the season, like that last episode, Stefan goes to Klaus because they find out that Klaus's blood is what you need to heal a werewolf bite. So Stefan goes to Klaus being like, I will do anything, just please give me blood so that I'm able to give it to Damon to make him better. And what Klaus proposes to Stefan is that he travel with him and be the Ripper that he's been, and then he'll give him his blood to save Damon, and so Stefan agrees to that. John also ends up having Bonnie do this ritual that trades his life for Elena's, so Elena comes back to life and John loses his life. So this was definitely this season was definitely a pretty good season, but I'm just trying to think, like, would I consider it a favorite? Yeah, I would consider it kind of at the top there, because I like the storyline as the season goes on, of us not knowing who Klaus is, us just hearing of him, and then the big introduction of Joseph Morgan, who plays Klaus. I thought that was cool and pretty fun. I like just finding out more and more about the universe and everything. Like, obviously these are just major plot points, but watching the seasons, you get a bit more of the story, a bit more of the pizzazz. So I think I would put this one, I'd put season 2 at 2. So yeah, season 2 goes to 2. Next up is season 3. Okay, so the season starts off with Damon, Elena, and Aloric searching for Stefan, because he's kind of just been gone for months and they don't know where to necessarily find him. He's been on a Ripper binge with Klaus. Klaus at this point keeps trying to make hybrids, but it's not working and he can't figure out why. And at this point, Jeremy sees dead people everywhere. Klaus, Rebecca, and Stefan head back to Mystic Falls. There's this entire thing that happens where Klaus finds out that Elena is alive, and she is the reason that he can't make hybrids, because her blood is needed. But yeah, Klaus forces Stefan to turn off his humanity, and because he's found out that Elena is the person and her blood is the only way he can make hybrids, he tells Stefan to stay in town to watch Elena and protect her. Tyler also becomes a hybrid, and then Rebecca gets daggered and put in the box again. As revenge for Klaus making him turn off his humanity and kind of just forcing him to go on the road with him, Stefan steals all of Klaus's siblings, because if you don't know, like, Klaus likes to travel around with all his daggered siblings in caskets. So Stefan steals those caskets in retaliation to Klaus. All the while this is happening, Damon and Elena are kind of growing closer as friends. A few episodes later, Klaus gets all his siblings back. Damon unstakes Elijah. Elijah unstakes the rest of the family. And then Bonnie ends up bringing back the mother. The Michelson mother is what I would call her. And then the Michelson mother is like, I want us all to just be a family again. And so all these siblings agree to live in this, like, mansion with the Michelson mother. All the while, at the party, she ends up linking all of her children's lives together because she plans on Xing them all. So yeah, she's a fun mom. Elijah and Klaus end up stopping the mother from being able to X them all. At this point, Stefan's humanity is back on. He's dealing with the guilt, and he's also trying to control his bloodlust. Aloric also discovers that he might be Xing people unconsciously due to the Gilbert ring. Damon ends up finding some white oak. They end up Xing Finn. He is one of the originals. He's the only original that was on board with the mother's plan. This prompts him to find out that if you X an original, you also X their entire bloodline. But the Salvatores and Elena still want to X the originals, so they go on a little journey to find out who the Salvatores are related to, like whose bloodline they come from. And while on this hunt to figure out who is the leader of the Salvatore vampire bloodline, Elena and Damon share their first little. So yeah, romance. All the while this is happening, back in Mystic Falls, the Michelson mother is a witch, and she makes this reusable white oak stake for Aloric, who, if you don't remember, I mentioned earlier, he's unconsciously Xing people from the being X'd with the Gilbert ring on so many times. So now he's kind of like a vampire hunter, or he like has this like lust to X vampires. And so what she does is she performs this ritual to make him a reusable white oak stake, and also make him have, the strength of a vampire, the lust for blood, kind of like a vampire, but not completely. He can do everything a vampire does, except he has a human, what's it called? Life. Like, he's not immortal. And later in the season, we find out that he is, in fact, like, his life is linked to Elena's life. But after that, Mother Michelson ends up back in a coffin. And then to get rid of evil Aloric, what Rebecca does, knowing that his life is linked to Elena's, what Rebecca does is she runs the car that Elena is in heading towards Mystic Falls off a bridge. And Elena ends up getting X'd. And because Elena drowns, Aloric gets X'd. And then at the end of the season, we get the iconic, Okay, so I think I'm going to... Thank you. I think I'm going to put this season at season 3. We have 8 seasons, so I think I'm going to put this at the number 6 spot. It was a good season. Was it my favorite? No. But was it a nice little... Yes. And I think the hotel kiss between Elena and Damon is very iconic TVD moment. So that's another reason that this is going at 6 and not lower. So yeah. Now moving on to season 4. Elena wakes up and finds out that she's a vampire. And because she's a vampire, she starts to remember all the times that Damon compelled her and everything he said. Stefan teaches her how to feed off of animals, but it doesn't end up working for some reason. They can't figure it out. Like, she just can't hold the blood down. And then a new hunter comes to town. The hunter ends up bleeding a girl at the funeral, drawing out all the vampires. This doesn't end up working. He does end up shooting Tyler again, but in front of the entire town. But he doesn't necessarily succeed. But he is wreaking a bit of havoc. Elena confesses to Stefan that she's not able to hold down the animal blood and that she's been feeding off of Damon. Obviously, this makes Stefan mad. I mean, if your girlfriend told you that she was, doing stuff like that with your brother, you would be mad too. Jeremy is at a bar and he compliments the hunter on his tattoos, and the hunter's like, "Oh, you're not supposed to be able to see this. Only people who can see this are people who are possible hunters." So the hunter in town he offers to train Jeremy to become a hunter like him. And then that prompts the Salvatores to kind of figure out who this hunter is, and they end up finding out about the Five, which are this group of powerful hunters. Basically, they're witch-born vampire hunters. They also find out that the more vampires that these hunters X, they grow this tattoo that leads to the cure for vampirism. All while this is happening, Bonnie is also confiding in this college professor, and he'll just be called Professor for the rest of this season because he's only relevant for this season. But she ends up confiding to him about like magic and everything, and he offers to help her out. Elena ends up Xing the new hunter in town, which makes her find out the hard way as to why you don't want to X one of the 5 hunters, because they basically haunt you in death to the point where you just want to X yourself. Elena and Stefan break up. Elena and Damon end up getting closer, and they end up sleeping together. They end up together. A little bit later, maybe later in the episode or in the next episode, Caroline and Stefan put together that Elena is sired to Damon just because of all the weird things that were happening. After a little bit of Jeremy, training to be a hunter, and Bonnie confiding the professor finally says the reason as to why he's invested in Bonnie, and it's because he wants to free Silas. But Elena confesses that she's in love with Damon, and Damon vows to get her the cure, because she wants to be human, and because he kind of wants to know that her love is real for him and it's not just because of the sire bond. After finding out that the professor wants to let out Silas, Cole kind of just turns on everybody because he doesn't want Silas to get out. So he tries to X Jeremy a few times on a few various different occasions. And this prompts Elena to come up with the idea that they need to X Cole. And she also comes up with that idea because they're thinking, oh, if she X's Cole in original, his entire vampire bloodline will also go with him, which will complete Jeremy's tattoo, which will allow them to be able to get the map to the cure a little faster. They end up succeeding, and they X Cole in their family kitchen. And now we've jumped to the island because, Jeremy's tattoo mark is completed, and now everyone is on the island looking for the cure. While on the island, they find out that there is only one dose of the cure, not like just unlimited doses for everybody. The professor ends up going mad on the island and getting X'd. Catherine ends up feeding Jeremy to Silas to bring him back. So he's gone, and then that prompts Bonnie to like go off the rails because that's her boyfriend. Now back in Mystic Falls, Elena has a breakdown because her brother is X'd. He's gone. And so this prompts her to burn down their family home and turn off her emotions. Bonnie ends up seeing a bunch of hallucinations of the professor. We come to find out a bit later that this is Silas kind of getting into her brain and telling her to do things because he needs her to break down the other side. All the while, the Salvatores are trying to get Elena to turn back on her emotion. They succeed by Xing Matt right in front of her. This was all part of Stefan and Damon's plan. Matt was in on it, and he was wearing the Gilbert ring when they X'd him, so he ends up coming back to life completely fine. Bonnie drops the veil to the other side, which she ends up Xing herself. Elena feeds the cure to Catherine, not because she necessarily wants to, but because they're fighting and Catherine is about to X her, so she shoves the cure in her mouth and ends the fight. And then at the last episode, Stefan, I believe he's transporting Silas's body, and it ends up, that whole entire debacle ends up with Stefan being thrown in a box into a quarry, and Silas takes his place, not because Silas is now hypnotizing people to look like Stefan, but because he is the original Stefan. He's the original person with Stefan's face, and Stefan is a doppelganger of Silas. So I've always liked this season a lot more than the other ones. I don't know, I just like the twists and turns. I like the part where they go to the island. But I'm already put something at the number 2 spot, and I definitely don't want to put this season at number 1. I don't know what season would be number 1, but it's not this one. So as for season 4, I would say I'd put it at number 3. Next up is season 5. So we start the season with Jeremy, because Jeremy can see people who are not on the living plane. He's the only one who can seize Bonnie, and for this entire summer, he's been keeping up the lie that Bonnie is alive. She just doesn't want to tell her friends that she has been X'd. Caroline and Elena start college, and then Silas, while they're at college, Silas is posing as Stefan and also terrorizing the people of Mystic Falls. And he's also looking for Catherine at this point because Catherine is human, and her blood contains the cure to immortality. It's not even vampirism, but the cure to immortality. And Silas needs that because Silas wants to be X'd. Silas wants to be X'd, and he wanted Bonnie to drop the other side because he didn't want to go over to the other side when he was X'd. He wanted to go up to heaven with his love, Amara. And Nadia comes to town. Nadia becomes a little bit... She's only relevant for this season, and also Ketsia as well. Ketsia is Silas's love, or she loves Silas. Silas doesn't love her, but she's the reason that Silas is cursed with immortality and the reason that the other side exists. And she ends up being the one that pulls Stefan out of the quarry. Jer admits to the entire gang that Bonnie has been not with the living this entire summer, and he's been posing as her, which obviously is not taken well by everyone. And then Catherine finds out that Nadia is her daughter that she had taken away from her back in the 1500s, I believe, or the 1600s. At this point, we learn about travelers, which I can't really think of a good way to explain them, but Nadia ends up putting a traveler, which is just somebody's consciousness, inside of Matt. So like she just says these words and then that person comes forward. And then Silas ends up learning that Amara, his love, isn't in the afterlife. She's been alive this entire time. And well, both of them want to leave the plane of existence. The gang ends up finding that Amara, the only reason she is alive is because Ketsia made her the anchor to the other side. So they devise this plan to make Bonnie the anchor so she can return to the land of the living. And because Amara also wants to be X'd like Silas, it's just like a win-win in that situation. Ketsia ends up making Bonnie the anchor. Amara ends up getting X'd, and then so does Silas. But Ketsia did this not telling Bonnie what being the anchor to the other side entails, which is people, every supernatural creature that ends up getting X'd has to go through you, and it's not very pleasant. But Ketsia also gets X'd as well. And then moving a little bit later into the season, Damon ends up getting captured by an Augustine doctor. And Augustine, going a little bit into that, is like this organization that experiments on vampires. And we find out that Damon, back in like, I believe the 40s, I might be wrong on that, was captured by Augustine. He ended up escaping, but he gets captured again. Elena ends up getting trapped as well, and that is when we meet Enzo, and we find out that Enzo was an Augustine vampire with Damon. Obviously, Damon and Elena ends up escaping, and then Enzo ends up escaping, and he stays around in town for a little bit. Moving on a little bit later, Catherine, who has taken the cure, is like slowly moving on because she's like, she's been around for hundreds of years. So the cure cured her, and now she's just starting to grow old at a rapid rate. And as she's on her bed, about to leave the land of the living, she transfers her consciousness into Elena because she also has that traveler blood within inside of her. And then Catherine moves to make her stay in Elena permanent without the gang knowing. And Catherine, inside of Elena's body, ends up breaking up with Damon. So Damon spirals with Enzo, and he ends up, doing what Damon does, and that's going on a rampage, Xing people, and acting like he doesn't care about anything. And then Liz makes an intro. Liz is one of the Gemini witches, which we'll know more about that later, but Liz makes her intro. Caroline and Stefan end up putting together, again, they just be putting stuff together, both of them. They end up putting together that Catherine survived, and she is now living inside of Elena. Nadia, Catherine's daughter, she ends up getting X'd by a werewolf, Venom. And this prompts, as Nadia is slowly leaving the land of the living, this prompts Catherine, who is inside of Elena's body, to come back to the Salvatore mansion. And they kind of like set this trap up for her because they brought Nadia there, and she wanted to see Nadia before she leaves the land of the living. And so that kind of like prompts this scene where they plan on Xing Catherine and making her leave Elena's body. And so they end up Xing Catherine as well. And then Elena comes back into her body. But before Catherine got X'd, she ended up stabbing Elena with this serum from the Augustine, I don't want to say factory, from one of the Augustine doctors, and this serum kind of makes it so that vampires really only crave vampire blood. We're also introduced to Liz's brother. His name is Luke. And they just become more relevant later. But Liz, Luke, Matt, Jer, and Ty try to stop the travelers because now there are a bunch of travelers kind of trying to inhabit Mystic Falls, and they're trying to bring back their leader, whose name is Marcos. And then the gang finds out that the other side is now collapsing, and Stefan ends up Xing Enzo. And then a little bit later, the travelers end up turning Mystic Falls into a safe zone. And I say a safe zone like, it's not really a safe zone. It's just like no magical creatures can really enter Mystic Falls, especially like vampires, because it will strip away the magic protecting you. Like, for example, if Stefan were to enter Mystic Falls at this point, his original wound that turned him into a vampire, which was a gunshot, would reappear, and he would slowly get X'd as a human. And then Tyler ends up getting X'd. And a little bit before Tyler gets X'd, he ends up Xing Stefan because it's not truly Tyler. It's a traveler who is inside Tyler because Stefan and Elena are important to the travelers, important to Marcos because they're both doppelgangers, but I just wanted to mention that Stefan is also on the other side, as well as Aloric. Enzo's over there, but they don't want him, and Bonnie, so they also want to get them back. And then the gang comes up with a plan to get rid of the travelers because they want to go back home. And so this plan entails them like being able to gather all of the, they want to come up with a plan to get rid of the travelers and also figure out how to stop the other side from collapsing. So what they end up doing is gathering the travelers inside the Mystic Grill, kabooming the grill, and that makes all of them go bye-bye. So Damon gets X'd at that point. Elena gets X'd at this point. They all are X'd on the other side as it is collapsing, and they go through Bonnie to come back to the land of the living. But the only people who end up making it through are, reading my list right here, Elena, Stefan, Tyler, Enzo, and Aloric. They make it through Bonnie and get back to the land of the living, but Damon doesn't make it back and Bonnie doesn't make it back, and they just end up disappearing, and the other side goes with it. Compared to the season so far, the season was fun, but it wasn't the most fun. I thought it was very interesting. I thought the Catherine plotline was very interesting. But other than that, like I said, this one was never, because I've watched the Vampire Diaries like a bunch of times, and this one was never my favorite season. Overall, for most of the seasons, it's like there's bits and pieces I like of each season, more so than the entire season itself, like plot lines that I like. But that's not what we're going off of. We're trying to rank the seasons. So this one, season 5, I put season 5 at 7, the number 7 spot. Because it's not a terrible season, but it's definitely not my favorite compared to like other seasons. Now moving on to season 6, Elena's in nursing school and we are introduced to Joe, who is, we're introduced to Joe. That's where we'll leave it for right now. Everyone still can't return to Mystic Falls because the curse that the travelers have put on the town is still present. Damon and Bonnie end up they just wake up in this random place. They don't know where they are. It looks like 94 Mystic Falls, but they don't know where they are. Later we find out that they are in a prison world, but who the prison world is for, that is later. Aloric still has his powers that was given to him by Michelson Mother, and so he has the powers to compel vampires. So he goes through this process with Elena because Elena is grieving the loss of Damon, and Aloric takes away that grief and makes it so that Elena really just like stops loving Damon because she just can't handle all that grief as of right now. Eventually, Damon and Bonnie meet Kai, and they find out that Kai is the reason that this prison world exists. It wasn't made for them. It was made to trap Kai. And, of course, they find out later as to why that is. Kai tells Bonnie and Damon how they can get out of the prison world. Kai doesn't have, he's a siphon. He's not a witch. He's from a witch family, but he doesn't have powers himself, so he's not able to get out of the world. So with Bonnie there, he now like has a way to get out, so he tells them about it. At this point, Tyler and Liz are also getting closer. But going back to Bonnie and Damon, they find out again that Kai is in this prison world because he X'd his entire family except like a few of his family members, and after that happened, he was trapped in this prison world by his Gemini coven, is what they were. Bonnie and Damon devise this plan to get out of the prison world but leave Kai behind. It doesn't end up going exactly to plan. Kai intervenes, and to stop him from getting out, what Bonnie does is she sends Damon out of the prison world and sends him out with the device needed to get out of the prison world so that Kai can't leave and he can't have access to that. But obviously that ends up trapping her and Kai in the prison world in the process. Aloric and Joe end up getting closer. Aloric crosses the Mystic Falls line, and because Mystic Falls is still that zone that the Travelers had made it, he ends up getting X'd the same way that he got X'd before. So like with a chest wound, and Joe ends up saving his life from that chest wound. So instead of all the powers that he has are gone. So he's not able to recompel Elena or undo his compulsion because now he's just human again. And then Joe reunites with Liz and Luke because Liz and Luke and Joe are Kai's siblings, and they kind of got split up after Kai went on his rampage, Xing their entire family. And then Kai ends up getting out of the prison world anyway. And then Elena and Damon start to grow closer again, even though her memories of like her feelings of loving him have been thrown away. Luke and Kai end up merging, and Luke ends up losing the battle, getting X'd by Kai, and Kai comes out more powerful because now he's technically the leader of the Gemini Coven. And then Elena and Damon get back together. Caroline and Stefan now grow closer together, and then Jeremy leaves off to art school. I put that in air quotes because he doesn't actually end up going to art school. I think he goes off to hunt vampires, if I believe correctly. But Sheriff Forbes, Caroline's mother, ends up succumbing to cancer, and she ends up getting X'd. Bonnie escapes the prison world. Alord proposes to Joe, and then Bonnie and Damon get reunited. And I mentioned this scene because I think this is one of my favorite scenes of the show. But because Caroline's mother is gone, she ends up turning off her emotions. But through a videotape that Bonnie took right before she left the prison world, because there was two prison worlds merging together as she was leaving, and she had this video recorder. She ends up showing the tape to Damon, and Damon sees the woman that appears in the tape, and that woman ends up being his mother, and he's confused as to why his mother is in a prison world because he thought that she had gotten X'd by some disease like consumption years ago, back in like the 18 or 1900s. So Bonnie, Damon, Elena, and Kai end up traveling to this 1903 prison world that contains Damon's mom to get her out. And they end up getting Damon's mom out. Her name is Lily, and I'll be calling her Lily from now on. They end up getting Lily out, but what Bonnie does is she leaves Kai behind in the prison world, in the 1903 prison world, not his own prison world. But they leave him behind as they get her out of the prison world. And then we find out that Joe is pregnant. Damon gets the cure for Elena. I believe the way he gets it is getting it through the prison world. Like, it exists in the prison world, so he got it through there. That might not be correct, but he definitely does end up getting the cure for Elena. Elena takes the cure and becomes human again. Joe and Alord have a wedding because they're getting married. That is how you say that. And Kai announces that he's back from the prison world by stabbing Joe in the stomach. Kai is powerful at this point. He ends up Xing Joe on that day. And then because he's the leader of the Gemini Coven, if he gets X'd, so does the rest of the Gemini Coven. So Kai ends up Xing himself, which ends up Xing the rest of the Gemini Coven. And then after he X's the rest of the Gemini Coven, puts the spell on Elena and Bonnie, linking their lives. So as long as Bonnie is alive, Elena will stay in a coma. So if Bonnie gets X'd, then Elena will wake up. And so everyone kind of psychically says goodbye to Elena for now, and Damon ends up Xing Kai. So this was actually my favorite season. I don't know why, but this season has always just been my favorite. I think it's, I enjoy, obviously Kai is a terrible person, but I've always enjoyed, just, the actors' take on the character. I've also enjoyed, finding out the story about the Gemini Coven and everything, the wedding, even though it ends terribly. I just love everything that goes on in this season. So it's definitely getting the number one spot for now. Moving on to season 7, now we get into the Heretics, and I am not going to be talking about every single heretic. I'm only going to be mentioning the ones that are truly important by name. So as of right now, if you hear the names Nora, Mary Louise, or Valerie, or Julian, just know I'm talking about the heretics. And the heretics are vampires who are also witches. The heretics, all of them are freed from the prison world. They were in the prison world with Lily in 1903. They were also freed with Kai, like Kai brought them when he came. It's just they weren't necessarily started to be mentioned till this season. Caroline and Stefan are together. There's a struggle. The heretics are struggling to deal with normal life. Long story short, the gang has everyone leave Mystic Falls to get away from the heretics, and they like have this deal where if someone crosses the Mystic Falls border, they're free. That person is free game for the heretics, but they will stay in Mystic Falls. The heretics will, and so will the gang, to kind of just be in that town, but no one else will. And then all the while, Aloric is also trying to bring back Joe. And then Aloric finds out there's a way that he can bring Joe back with the Phoenix Stone, which is the stone that he kind of like finds. And so that prompts the rest of the gang to learn about what the Phoenix Stone and what the Phoenix Stone is and what it does. And then the heretics bring back Julian. And Julian is Lily's lover. He was someone who later, back in the day, got trapped inside the Phoenix Stone, so they bring him back. And then Aloric finds out that the Gemini Coven saved his children that Joe was carrying, and they put the children, the twins, inside of Caroline, so his babies are alive. Bonnie ends up finding out that the Phoenix Stone goes with this sword, and when put together, it creates a powerful weapon. And then moving on, we skip forward a few episodes, and Julian has just really been causing the heretics and Lily problems, so they all plot to X him, funny enough. And so in one of the episodes, they kind of come together as a gang, like I said, and plot to X Julian. And episodes before, Julian had linked him in Lily's life. And so as this plan is in play, Lily X's herself, not knowing that Julian had unlinked them. So she's the only one who ends up getting X'd, and Julian ends up surviving because they weren't linked anymore. But she thought she was going to be Xing both of them when she did it. And then Bonnie finds out about the Huntress, whose name is Raina. And the sword, the Phoenix Stone and sword, belongs to her. That's like her weapon. Caroline goes into labor and ends up delivering the babies. Raina comes back, and she ends up marking Stefan, which basically is like, if she like wounds you, doesn't even like stab you with the blade, but like wounds you with it, you end up getting marked, which means she like has some type of psychic link to you, so she now knows your every move, what you're doing, and she's able to find you. And then Enzo introduces us, the viewer, and the rest of the gang to the Armory, which is like this place with a lot of magical artifacts. And then we get like a time jump, and I just want to say that before I get into the rest of this, because otherwise it's not going to make sense. You're like, oh, you just like missed something. No, there's a time jump that happens in this season, and so now I'll explain like the basics of the time jump. And so we jump forward, I believe, 3 years into the future, and Caroline is with Aloric, and they're living happily with the twins. Damon, 3 years before, put himself in a box because he just couldn't deal with living without Elena and just all the stuff that comes with his life. Matt is salty. That's all you need to know. Matt has been salty for a little bit, but he's salty. Stefan has been on the run because remember, he's marked, and so Raina can come after him. But he has been on the run with Valerie, who, if you don't remember, is one of the heretics. Enzo has been at the Armory, kind of like working and doing stuff. Bonnie has been in a mental institution. Not because she's been trying to like figure things out. Not like figure things out mentally, but figure things out like find out facts and stuff. Raina ends up catching up to Stefan and Xing him again with the Phoenix, with the with the blade attached to the Phoenix Stone. And then Mary Louise and Nora, which if you don't remember, are two of the heretics who have been going around. Nora gets marked by Reyna, and instead of going on the run like Stefan and Valerie did, Mary Louise and Nora decide to destroy the Phoenix Stone and destroy the blade, which ends up releasing all the souls of everyone trapped, along with Xing them in the process. And so what that does is kind of like sends Stefan's consciousness out into like the first random body, and we have this entire episode where like Stefan is trapped in this body of this human man, and then another vampire is trapped in his body, and eventually they make the switch. I didn't mention it on here because like it's a plot point for like 2 seconds, and then Stefan's back in his normal body. So I didn't mention it, but I just kind of want to explain that to y'all. But Valerie ends up leaving Stefan, and then we find out that Bonnie and Enzo are together. The armory where Enzo has been working has been trying to find Bonnie for some reason. We don't know the reason as of right now, but Bonnie has been hiding herself from the armory by taking these pills that I believe have Reyna's blood in them. Because it just like it stops like them from locating her, but Enzo stops her from taking the pills because he finds out that those pills have been making her sick. And then at this point, because the Phoenix Stone is destroyed and Reyna has a psychic link to everyone who was trapped in that stone, she's kind of going mad a little bit. And Damon and Enzo agree to X all the vampires that have been set free from the Phoenix Stone, and in return of them Xing all the vampires, Bonnie, who is sick and, slowly leaving the land of the living, gets to get Reyna's remaining life. But they also end up finding out that there is an evil trapped within the basement of the armory, and that's the reason that they want Bonnie, I believe. That the armory's been looking for Bonnie. The armory somehow ends up getting wind. I believe Damon tells them. They end up Xing all the rest of the vampires that are on Reyna's list. But eventually the armory does end up opening the tomb in the basement containing and setting free the evil that's inside. But what Bonnie does is she ends up sealing the building. So the evil is set free inside the building, but it doesn't get a chance to escape said building. But it ends up that the evil ends up Xing everyone within the building. Reyna ends up making the switch with Bonnie and giving her last life, which that ends up making Bonnie a huntress instead of Reyna. Reyna gets to go to her forever sleep, but now Bonnie hates vampire and wants to X them all. And then Damon breaks into the armory to free Bonnie of the huntress curse. But because, like I said, there was an evil trapped within the armory, and now that Damon has come in, like he's broken that seal that Bonnie created, he ends up getting trapped and brainwashed, and then Enzo goes in after him, and Enzo ends up also getting trapped within the armory and getting brainwashed by the evil inside, and they're both forced to do this big bad evil's bidding. And that's where season 7 ends. The only 2 spots I have left right now are season 5 and season 8. So as of right now, what would I say is season 7 of 5 or season 7 and 8? I'm going to put season 7 at 5 as of right now. I do this because, first of all, I only have 2 spots left. And second of all, it's not a terrible season. I have to admit that the last 2 seasons of TVD are not my favorites. They're not terrible. They just, I just kind of, check out. I think it's maybe because of the time jump. Yeah, I do like the Reyna storyline. I kind of understand why they did the time jump, but it just kind of, I guess it kind of just throws me off. But yeah, as of right now, season 7 is going at 5. And now, last but not least, let's go over season 8, which compared to the other seasons, all the other seasons have either 22 or 23 episodes. Season 8 was only 16, so this is going to be a lot faster. Before we get into it, I just want to say that when I'm saying siren or sirens, there's two sirens' names are Sybil and Celine. So if I say Sybil and Celine, just know I'm talking about the sirens, the big bad, for part of the season. But an update, Matt is sheriff of Mystic Falls now. Damon and Enzo are doing the bidding of the monster that was inside the tomb at the armory. They still don't know what it is yet. They just know they're being controlled by it. Caroline and Stefan have been looking for Damon, and then they end up finding Damon, but he's like, I didn't want to be found type of situation. Damon has had his switch flipped for a little bit, so he hasn't really been necessarily trying to escape the big bad. He's been going along with it. The creature, they've been like, for months, Enzo and Damon have been finding humans and feeding it to the creature, but now after months the creature gains a physical form and we find out that she's a siren, and this one, her name is Sybil. And then Enzo ends up being a double agent, and what I mean by that is, like, yes, he's helping and he's being controlled by the siren, but he's also still holding on to his humanity and wanting to get back to Bonnie. He's been, like, sending her messages and stuff. And then Matt's dad comes to town. Stefan and Caroline end up getting married, which was a cute little thing. Stefan and Caroline end up trapping the siren within the armory, which ends up freeing Enzo and Damon. They're not technically free because she still kind of has a bit of mind control over them, and also they both have their humanity turned off, so they're not themselves. Basically, they can do whatever they want, but they're still, especially Damon, still doing her bidding. Stefan does find out that Sybil, the first siren, has a sister, and her name is Celine, and they both work for this guy named Cade, who they find out is the leader of Downstairs. That's what we'll call it, if you understand what I'm saying. He's the leader of Downstairs. So Celine, for this past season, up until this point, has been working as the nanny for the two twins. There are two Gemini Coven twins. Without Caroline and Aloric knowing, because if you don't remember, Caroline and Aloric have been, like, living together and raising the twins, and she's been acting as the babysitter for the twins, which gave her an opportunity to take the twins and, like, take them out on an adventure. So she ends up taking the twins. Sybil ends up escaping. So does Damon. Damon had been trapped by Stefan, but they both end up escaping. And then Celine, the second siren, who has been the nanny to the two Gemini Coven twins, Aloric and Caroline's daughters, Celine ends up summoning Cade, the leader of Downstairs, and she tries to propose this deal to him because Celine and Sybil, the sirens, have been working for Cade, and he, like, has a deal with them, and he owns their souls. So Celine steals the twins to kind of make a deal that, like, well, she said, I'll give you these twins, and then me and my sister are free after that. Cade doesn't end up taking that deal because what ends up happening is Sybil, this first siren sister, ends up making a deal with Cade that she'll give them Stefan and Damon, and in return, they don't have to work for him anymore. And he ends up taking that deal. Stefan and Damon, more so Stefan, because Damon was already kind of on boardish, but Stefan agrees to this terms of working for Cade because to save the twins, like, that he literally wants to save the twins. And so this prompts Damon and Stefan to set out on the road Xing bad people for Cade because that's what he wants from them. And then Bonnie, as that is also happening, Bonnie and Enzo are living their best life, and Bonnie plans on giving Enzo the cure for vampirism. And then Damon ends up retaliating against Sybil, the siren who trapped him, and so he traps her, and what she does is she turns his humanity back on and traps him in like this mental prison of all his guilt that he's accumulated from Xing all the people doing her bidding and everything he's done while his humanity has been turned off. What ends up getting him out is like Stefan, who has no humanity at this point, saying that he plans to destroy Mystic Falls. That ends up getting Damon back out, and they stop Stefan. But the way that Stefan was going to destroy Mystic Falls was by using this bell. But the only people who can ring the bell are Matt's family. They're the only people who can do it. The bell has to be rung, I believe, 12 times. And so what Stefan did was he compelled Matt to ring the bell 12 times. But obviously he doesn't succeed. Damon ends up stopping Matt from ringing the bell 12 times and going through with Stefan's plan. Damon stopped Matt from ringing the bell on the 11th time, which, because it had still been rung 11 times, that allowed Cade to escape from downstairs and come up to the real world. And what Cade ends up doing is Cade ends up Xing all the Sybil and Celine, the Siren twins. Well, not twins, sisters. And then Caroline traps Stefan in the basement because he still has no humanity at this point. He gets out because of Cade, and then Bonnie and Damon set out on a plan on how to X Cade. And as Stefan still has no humanity, as he's gotten out because Cade let him out, Stefan ends up Xing Enzo in front of Bonnie, and he gets into the house and he's about to X Bonnie as well, but right before he can do it, Bonnie injects Stefan with the cure. And you're probably wondering, where did Bonnie get the cure? So Bonnie was hanging on to Elena's body, and if you don't remember, Elena took the cure, so her blood is now the cure. So she has a syringe full of Elena's blood, and she injects it into Stefan, making him human again. And that obviously turns on his emotions because now he doesn't have a humanity switch, and it floods back all the bad things that he's done. But now he's human. I'm sorry, I said that Stefan and Caroline were already married. They were engaged up until this point. But we get introduced to Kai again, and Kai was downstairs with Cade, and he was able to make it out to the real world the same way that Cade did because the bell was rang 11 times, so he was just like able to weasel his way through as well. And then what Kai ends up doing is he ends up trying to trade Elena's casket for his freedom. It kind of works. Cade, at the very least, lets him go, and now Cade has Elena's casket, which obviously prompts Damon to come after Cade, and also Stefan, and Cade ends up giving Damon an ultimatum. Like, you can either save Elena and give me Stefan, or you can save Stefan and give me Elena. And what Damon does is like, no, I'll give you me, and then you can let Stefan and Elena go. And so that's what he ends up doing. Damon ends up Xing himself and giving himself over to Kane, like giving his soul to Kane. And then right as Damon was about to disappear, Bonnie comes in and basically saves him. While Bonnie and Cade are dueling, Stefan ends up Xing Cade, which allows Damon to return to his body. But now that Cade is dead, they thought that would get rid of downstairs, but that kind of just transferred power to Catherine, who has been down there. So now Catherine is the queen of downstairs. But Bonnie also traps Kai in a prison world, so now he can't do no harm anymore. What Catherine ends up doing is she ends up bringing back Matt's mother to do bidding for her on Earth for like just a short period of time. And what she ends up doing is Stefan and Caroline get married, and at the wedding she starts a gas leak in the house and almost X's Bonnie and the twins, but the twins save themselves and Bonnie in the process. And she also Catherine lets out Vicky to ring the bell, and Vicky, I'm sorry if I said Ricky. Vicky rings the bell on the hour every hour, which prompts the gang to get everyone out of Mystic Falls, because if the bell is rang 12 times, then that will just destroy everything within like a certain radius. So Bonnie ends up leaving Mystic Falls, Caroline, Aloric, the twins, and Stefan as well, because they all are human. No, not Caroline's not human, but the rest of them are human. Stefan ends up coming back to Mystic Falls because him and Damon have this plan to get rid of Catherine, the queen of downstairs, and also get rid of downstairs, because Xing, the queen of downstairs, also gets rid of downstairs. But while this plan is happening, Damon is like, no, Stefan. He compels Stefan to leave and get out of town so that he doesn't have to be the one to sacrifice himself and get rid of Catherine and downstairs. So Vicky rings the bell 12 times, and so this releases downstairs fire. But Bonnie, in the armory, does this spell to contain it, and so that the spell contains the fire within the tunnels of Mystic Falls and within the armory, and she succeeds in saving the town from the fire. But then it does a time jump to the night before the episode, and then what we end up through this time jump is that as Damon is holding Catherine and about to sacrifice himself to get rid of her and downstairs, Stefan sticks him with the cure, and so he passes out. Stefan drags his body to a safe place, and then Stefan ends up holding Catherine, Xing her, getting rid of her and downstairs, and also Xing himself in the process. So at this point, Stefan has been X'd, and Bonnie, now that she's on this new power kick, she ends up breaking the spell that was trapping Elena and linking their lives. So now Elena is awake from her slumber. Elena reunites with Damon and all of her friends. They all have a funeral for Stefan. And then we get to the ending, and this is an update on practically everybody that was mentioned, I should say. Matt is still sheriff of Mystic Falls. Bonnie leaves to travel the world. Aloric and Caroline open a boarding house called the Salvatore Boarding House, which, if you know Legacies, that's where this comes into play. Jared comes back as a teacher. I don't know if he's in Legacies. I've never watched it, but they show him coming back as a teacher. Sorry, I keep hitting something down here. They show him coming back to the mansion for at least a little bit of time. If he's not in Legacies, he is at the mansion, at the boarding house for a little bit. We get a mention from Klaus, who, if you are in the TVD universe, you know he's been in the originals as of right now, but we get a mention from Klaus because he donates money to the Salvatore boarding house. And then Elena, who's now alive, finishes med school. And then we get a sweet little story of her and Damon live a full life together. They grow old together in Mystic Falls. And then obviously they both leave the land of the living at an old age, and we get this cute scene at the end of the show of Elena reuniting with everyone who has left the land of the living from the past 7 seasons, when we also get to see Damon reunite with Stefan out the land of the living. And yeah, that's where the show ends. Now, the only spot I have left is season 8 is going to have to go at 8, because that's the only spot I have left. Like I said earlier, season 7 and season 8 are not my favorites, but they're still pretty good seasons. For the longest time, I was confused at the end, like at what happens, but after like rewatching it this time, hopefully I got it correct. Please feel free to correct me in the comments if I interpreted the ending incorrectly, like the part where Elena and Damon X. But I believe that's what happens. But yeah, I'm going to read out my ranking as of right now and then rework it a little bit, just a little bit, and then give you my updated list. Going from my favorite to least favorite season, we have it goes season 6, season 2, season 4, season 1, season 7, season 3, season 5, and then season 8. Now I'm going to go over this again to kind of give myself a little bit of refresh, and I'm going to rework this too. Okay, so I just reworked my list, and now I'm going to read off from most favorite to least favorite season. So at the number 1 spot we have season 6, season 7, season 2, season 1, season 4, season 5, season 3, and then season 8. I hope you enjoyed this. I feel like because the descriptions I was giving so long, like the season recaps were so long, I didn't put a lot of time into my reasoning as to why I was doing my ranking, but I do hope you enjoyed the season recaps. Please feel free to put your ranking in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more of me. I'm starting to try to post every Wednesday and Saturday. I'm saying that now to you to not only hold myself accountable, but to just tell you, if you want to see my content, I'm starting to do a Wednesday and Saturday posting schedule, so you can stay tuned to see videos from me then. That will be videos like singing videos, so covers, videos like this where I like rank movies and TV shows, because I really love movies and TV shows. Also other things like possibly art and miscellaneous stuff like that in the middle of that, like vlogs and makeup. As you can see, I did this look, So, and if you want to see anything else from me, feel free to also put that in the comment section down below. I do read your comments. I do see them. If I don't reply on the first day you commented, don't think I didn't see it. I'm a little bit of a late responder. Just letting you know now. But yeah, I hope you have a good day, good weekend, good night, and